Cemetery, it's my privilege and deep honor to welcome you to tonight's Juneteenth celebration, a moment of remembrance, reflection, and joy. My name is Helen Day. I'm Vice President of the Friends of Maple Grove. I'm joined today by cemetery historian and former Friends President Carl Balanis.
So as we gather here in the spirit of freedom, we also mark a milestone, the 150th anniversary of Maple Grove Cemetery. Since 1875, this sacred ground has stood as a witness to history, its triumphs and trials, its sorrows and songs. And woven into that story are the lives and legacies of countless African-American men and women who rest here, each with a voice that still speaks through the trees, the stones, and the stories we tell.
Tonight we are especially proud to dedicate this event to Millie Tunnell and her family. Born into slavery about 1785 in Virginia, Millie lived to see emancipation, reunion, and a new life in freedom here in Jamaica, Queens. Her journey is one of resilience, strength, and grace. It is a thread in the greater tapestry of Black history that we honor this evening.
From storytellers to poets, from memory to celebration, tonight we lift up the past not only to remember, but to renew. Let Juneteenth remind us that the long walk to justice continues, and that in remembering those who came before, we carry their dreams forward.
We thank our supporters, our friends, members, and patrons, the Maple Grove Cemetery Association, and the Office of Queensborough President Donovan Richards Jr. for helping make this celebration possible. May tonight inspire you as it reminds us all history is alive and freedom is a light we must always keep burning. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. A little housekeeping. Please turn off your cell phones. Mine's off. And the restrooms are downstairs on the lower level in the far corner on the left as you go down the stairs or at the elevator. So if you need anything else, just contact us.
Yeah.
And the gates closed, but it's not locked, so if you need to get out, just let us know. We'll open the gate.
But this will be the only gate open, not
gate.
Queens Boulevard or Lefferts.
Yeah, you can't go to one of the other gates to leave.
Yes, and we do have a wonderful archives that we collect with paintings and first edition books. And Helen, we just bought a drawing by an artist named Edward Caswell. Yeah. And it's a drawing. He was on a ship crossing the Atlantic when who did he spot but
Paul Robeson.
Wow. And he drew him. And Paul
Robeson
autographed it, and we were able to purchase it, and it'll be part of our collection.
So it's on its way.
Okay.
Set up a gallery
Is it set up in here?
Yes.
Is it here?
Yes. Yeah, and it's from 1929.
Where is it?
We didn't get it yet. We just
24th.
bought it yesterday, so it's shipping. So I'm watching that tracking number.
Come back and see it.
Yes.
Come back and see it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Where's that little guy? Oh, there he is. Excuse me. My phone is back there.
Good evening and welcome. Good evening. Here we go. Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good. Again, welcome this evening as we celebrate Juneteenth. And as we know, yesterday was actually June 19th. But freedom does not have any time limit.
No, it doesn't.
So we are still celebrating Juneteenth,
Yes.
marching towards our freedom.
Amen.
As the African Folk Heritage Circle gather this evening, we welcome you, welcome you, welcome you. My name is Lynette Braxton, and I am the Vice President of the African Folk Heritage Circle. And this evening, we always start off our story time with libation, which gives honor to our ancestors. We thank them for all of the things that they've done and gone through that strengthens us. And during our libation, Atiba Wilson will be lifting up prayers as the water is poured over the live plant. So, Atiba, do you need the mic? of your ancestors at this time, we call out their name, and we will pour the libation in honor of your ancestors. So you can just call out their names.
Aye, Ajay. Yo. Aye, Ajay.
Yo.
Aye, Ajay.
Yo.
Aye, Ajay.
Yo.
Also, Fedewa Eku Oyaluode. All praises be to the one Most High.
Yes.
Lai Lakataje Wo. We could do no less. Kumya Uso, you my ancestors. Jeleko me gave birth to me. Ibako, I am yours. Ibajaku, I believe in you. Mendelaku, I respect you. Imadeku, I accept you. Ikanibaku, I trust you. Dere Ejekrabe, see and protect. Some of you get a key. If I am righteous, speak. Sakote key. If not, speak. Redaniku Kriya Pujamo, show me your good road. Ejafrika me and Fakamo and help me avoid your obstacles. In other words, we know that our ancestors were not perfect, but we want to even learn from their mistakes. Watch what happens here. Send your blessings and good intentions. The same creator who made you, made me. We are one and always will be. We spoke about one of our ancestors earlier, Paul Robeson. We are one and always will be. So at this point, we would speak to the names of those great sheroes and heroes, the ones who did the extraordinary things, who provided the standards for all of us to judge whether or not we're following the righteous path. So some of the great sheroes and heroes call some of their names. Sojourner Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Betty Shabazz.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Victoria Matthews.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Lucy Green.
Jeba Moja Wosliba. Haj Malik Shabazz. Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Don Pedro.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Joyce Duncan.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Langston Hughes.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Elizabeth Canty.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Bobby Landry.
Jeba Moja Wosliba. Marcus
Roberta
Garvey.
Flack.
Marcus Garvey. Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Roberta Flack.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Arturo Schomburg.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Ruby Bridges.
Jeba Moja Wosliba. John
Sly
Henry
Stone.
Jeba Moja Wosliba. Excuse me.
Sly Stone.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Ossie Davis.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Ruby D.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Marion Anderson.
Ozzie Davis. Jeba Moja Wosliba. And now, at this time, it is imperative that all of us acknowledge those individuals. Like for me, I have to say my mama's name, Catherine Ludovine Sanders. I have to talk about my daddy, Reginald Wilson, and say Jeba Moja Wosliba. I have to talk about my Uncle William and my Aunt Vera who raised me, Jeba Moja Wosliba. My great-granddaddy, Golden Peaks, Jeba Moja Wosliba. My great-great-grandmama, Elizabeth Peaks, Jeba Moja Wosliba. I call their names. If we don't honor our ancestors, who will?
Mm-hmm.
So we must recognize those who did the everyday work.
Mm-hmm.
The ones whose names that if we don't call them, other people won't know them.
Yes.
So we must call their names.
Shirley Jackson Carroll.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
George
Lisa
DeMorse.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Bernadette Stevens.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Donnie Mae DeMorse.
Jeba Moja
Pearl
Wosliba.
Jackson.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Augustine Green.
Natalie Landry.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Ronnie Bishop.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Elaine Bailey.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Preston Green.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Antonio.
Jeba Moja
James
Wosliba.
Jackson.
Jeba Moja Wosliba.
Vesta Atkinson.
Jeba Moja Wosliba. Jay Saku Krumim so slow. We know that your spirit never can die. And Lagwe Fara Massacre. Then come to guide this family. Lagwe Fara Massacre. Come to guide this family. Ejewosu Ili Madakru. And always we will honor you. Ejewosu Ili Madakru. Always we will honor you. Crew, spirit, Radima, light, Sunda, life, for the one in Jewosu. Aye, Ajay, yo. Aye, Ajay, yo. Aye, Ajay, yo. Aye, Ajay, yo. Aye, yo. Hold on.
Thank you. Amen. Ashe. I hope that you were touched and connected with our ancestors and your ancestors to know that their life blood flows through us. And the great things that we are doing is because of the legacies that they left for us. This evening, we're going to share some stories and songs and poetry honoring and celebrating Juneteenth, the freedom, ringing of freedom. Tonight, we're gathered in the spirit of remembrance, reflecting, resilience, and rejoicing. Juneteenth commemorates that long delayed day, June 19, 1865, when enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, finally learned that they were free. But tonight is more than a history lesson. It's a homecoming of truth. Through our stories, song, and poetry, we honor the ancestors who dreamed of freedom and the voices still carrying that dream forward. So, we're going to begin with understanding why we're here. How many of you know, just with a show of hands, of what is Juneteenth? One person, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, right, you got a great deal. When I was growing up, I heard about it, but I didn't know about it. And living in Louisiana, people wanted to separate themselves so quickly from slavery. And whenever we had kinfolk in Texas who celebrated Juneteenth, we thought they were strange. Why are you celebrating something to do with slavery? That's in the past. But as I got older, I realized that's my connection. And tonight, that's what we're doing. We're reconnecting with our history. And to understand why we are celebrating this holiday of June 19th. You know, it once was a whisper in the South about being free. And now we shout it from every street corner, from every mountaintop, about the national federal holiday, June 19th. Tonight, our speaker, she's going to share the journey from grassroots celebration to that federal holiday. Please welcome our guest, and no stranger to everybody, Thelma Ruffin Thomas, who is the president of the African Folk Heritage Circle. Please put your hands together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see some familiar faces
Yes.
and some I haven't met before, and I am just delighted that you took time on this beautiful day to come out and share our history. Have you ever heard of Opal Lee? Anyone here have heard of Opal Lee? One person. Well, let me tell you about this woman. Opal Lee waved to her grandson, Buddy, as he barreled across the park. Buddy zipped past lines of picnic tables, covered with platters of barbecue, baked beans, tomatoes, tarts, and Buddy ran to the blooming tree where Opal Lee held court. Her braided hair was a silver crown. Her eyes were twinkling stars. Great-grandmama, she said, tell us a Juneteenth story. When Opal had been a youngin' like the children at her feet, her granddad, Zach, told freedom stories on the wooden porch. As Opal Lee remembered his words, she lifted her hands and cheered, Juneteenth means freedom. And now it's story time. Once upon a blazing sun, black bodies were bought and sold like cattle. Black folks plowed the fields, but were not allowed to own land. Black women cooked the food, but were not allowed to feast on roast and ribs from the slave owner's table. Black children cleaned the one-room schoolhouses, but were not allowed to read or write. Earning and learning were against the law. Slavery was a thief. American slavery dragged on like a plague until January 1st, 1863. That's when President Lincoln raised his feathered pen. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation with a mighty stroke. However, Texas was big and many miles away from Mr. Lincoln. The white enslavers defied his words. Black bodies remained in bondage. They plowed, they worked, they cleaned. Freedom did not ring through Texas in 1863. It was toiling time in the Lone Star State. For 2 years, 5 months, and 18 more weary days. The year was 1865. The day was June 19th. General Gordon Granger marched through Galveston with the Union Army troop. The people of Texas are informed, he said, that in accordance with a proclamation from the President of the United States, all slaves are free. Yep. It was a day of Jubilee. Perfect for Texas. Rebecca, barbecue. We barbecued all the delicious delights the people had been denied during servitude. Grandma, Buddy said, what was Juneteenth like when you were a child? Grandma Opal unwrapped another story. She said blacks and whites lived separately when I was a child. Jim Crow signs littered old Fort Worth in every place. Black families were banned from Forest Park Zoo, except one day of the year. On Juneteenth, we could picnic, party, and ride the Ferris wheels in Forest Park Zoo. Buddy groaned and shook his head. Those old days don't sound good to me. Grandma Opal said, I spent good days on my granddaddy's porch reading poetry books. Some memories are chocolate sweet, but others bruise my body. She said, I learned a big lesson that Juneteenth day, and I decided that I would become a teacher, and I would keep on reaching and teaching. I would keep on walking, and I would keep on talking. And Opal Lee did all those things. She led a movement to make Juneteenth a national holiday. For 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, she walked the streets and got 1.5 million signatures. And finally, President Biden said that this would be a national holiday. Now, Juneteenth was celebrated in other states, especially in Texas and some other places in the South. I heard about it. I knew it was celebrated in Brooklyn, but until my good friend and person who started the African Folk Heritage Circle, I didn't know that much about Juneteenth. And so I really owe a lot to Dr. Joyce Duncan, because she was the one that said, Velma, we've got to celebrate it. And so that is one of the things that I thank her for. And then one day I was in the New York Public Library, and the librarian in the children's room had a book, what we call a book that you set up and on the shelves so that people might see it and take it out because you think it's of interest. And it was a book written about Opal Lee. And that's how I found out about it. In 24 or 22, Opal Lee came to New York City, and she was honored at Carnegie Hall. That's right. And then last year, I believe, Habit for Humanity built a house for her on the property that she used to live in. One Juneteenth, the Ku Klux Klan burned her mother's house, and they were all living in it, and they burned it down. Nobody was arrested, but Habit for Humanity built a house for her, and I saw it on TV. And so, and when she submitted those signatures to Biden, She was 94 years old, and I still believe that she's alive now. Yes. And so I never would have thought that Juneteenth would be a national holiday. So you never know. And there's so many people out there who have dreams and they go forward on their dreams, like Opal Lee. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Thelma. And that's a story that we can all stick by. And if you want to learn more, go to the public library, or as the children say, Google it. Google it. My grandchildren are quick about saying Google it. So, our dreams. We have to follow our dreams, and it doesn't matter how old or young we are, as Opal Lee demonstrates with her life, and also as our ancestors. They did not bow down the knee to slavery. They resisted.
Yes.
They fought back.
Yes.
They had revolutions, things that we probably don't even know. And again, going back to when I was in Louisiana, they didn't want to tell us the true stories, making us not be proud of who we are and where we came from. Until I got older. I said, no, I wasn't created to be underneath anybody. I need to know more.
Yes.
And those resilience through their stories that I, as a storyteller, started learning about, like Thelma, going to the library and learning about. Those are the stories I tell my children and my grandchildren. Those are the stories of resistance. The stories are not only the words that come out of our mouth, but also from the beating of our drums, our hearts. And resilience has rhythm. Our next storytellers blends music and memory to honor those who endured. A spoken word artist and educator combining music and story to honor Black resilience. Please welcome the Ka Collective, Kyoko and Atiba.
The word Ka, capital K, capital A, is a Kemetic term. Kemet is what we call what is now known as Egypt. Egypt is a Greek word. Kemet is of the language, the Kemetic language, the people were Kemateu. And so we start there, even though that's actually not where the beginning was. So we know, however, that Kemet was a place whereby we had books anywhere from 12 to 20,000 years old. Storytelling was very prevalent. Storytelling had preceded untold millenniums. As long as human beings have been there, we've been telling stories. And we've been writing. Yeah, the first writings were just pictographs. Somebody wanted to leave an idea of what they had done. And eventually, symbolic script, demotic script, neurotic script. Demotic and neurotic script are a type of phonetic scripts. In fact, the Phoenicians were an African people who were ships. And they were known to be some of the greatest, boatsmen, especially in what is now known as the Mediterranean Sea. But anyway, their particular script is what we now know as phonics, the phonetics. All right, that's where our alphabet comes from. But I'm starting there because the Sonincan people, they at one point are from the city of Soni, people of Soni, and they migrated from the Hapi region, now known as the Nile. They migrated west, and they became a part of eventually what will be known as the Great Mali Empire. And during that time, there were all types of, not only verbal stories, sometimes stories would take 2 or 3 days to be told. All right, would have music and dance, everything would be a part of that. And so then also there came a time of great confusion, of invasion. And so the emphasis began to be put on the oral tradition, such to the point that a lot of times people think that the Jalis, those women and men who utilize music and poetry and storytelling and dance in order to transmit the information, at that point, the emphasis began to be put on the oral tradition, such to the point that a lot of us don't recognize that the most numeral in terms of the amount of writing in Africa started there, writing. But I don't want to go too deep into that because we ain't got but so much time.
That's right. That's time to keep it right here.
So, we're going to start this journey. We're going to put our emphasis on song, the stories in the song. And I'm going to just give a brief introduction of 2 songs. The rest, we're singing, the lyrics are sung in English, so I'm not going to have to explain that. Some of the songs you will recognize.
Okay.
Our particular version is going to be a little bit different than you might be used to, but you'll hear it. But Lamban and Jondon, Lamban celebrates, one of the songs that we're going to sing today celebrates the Jalis. Ah, Jaliada, Alaleka Jaliada, Alaleka Jaliada, Alaleka Jaliada. What we're saying is that the Jalis are a gift from God. Why? Because they keep us in touch with our ancestors. Jondon is a song of mourning. It's a time when we are losing connection with our ancestors. Our names are taken away. Losing touch with our ancestors puts us in a tremendous state of pain. And from there, we'll let the other songs speak for themselves. So, the first song is somewhat celebratory to acknowledge the Jalis. And then Jondon talks about the incursion. But also we're talking about the resistance, because in our songs, we found ways to keep strong.
Yes.
And as they say in Sankofa, you gotta go back and fetch it. You gotta look back in order to go forward.
Yes.
Thank you both so
all
very,
right.
very much.
Yes.
You guys recognize Victor and Voice? And then he brought us back to Egypt. Oh my God, brought us back home
Oh, yes.
to Africa.
It's all right.
God. Woo! And that first one, I don't know if you guys noticed when they were performing the Jolly song, how the trees
They
out
were-
there,
Yes.
did you see that?
Yes,
It was
yes.
like they were rejoicing
They were
also, and they were just swaying and going like that.
Yes, they were.
And they were just going out like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I hear you.
Yes.
I see you.
It's all
I
right.
feel you.
Woo.
The ancestors.
Praise him in the highest.
You know, they're letting us know that, yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you.
I hear you.
Don't forget me.
No.
I'm right here. And
Oh, yes.
talking about the ancestors and being in connection with them. From the hush harbors to Sunday sermons, faith was a path to freedom. Our next storyteller uplifts that sacred legacy. Let's welcome Vienna Carroll.
I know I've been changed. The angels in heaven signed my name. How y'all doing?
Doing all right.
My name is Ibby King. And I thank y'all from the Rhode Island Abolition Society for inviting me to speak. Because everybody should be free.
Yes.
And I want to tell you our freedom story. I've heard it in my family for a long time, and we've shared it, and I was only 3 when we fled to freedom on Good Friday in 1831. So I didn't know too much myself, but I've heard the story so many times. So when the Abolition Society came to my church, Bethel AME over there on Proctor Street, I said, yes, I would come and tell the story to you all. So I hope you enjoy it. So as I say, I was 3 years old and we lived in Parsons Creek, Maryland, down there on the Chesapeake, down in Dorchester County. We was a few years before Harriet Tubman, but it was down that way. And I had a big family. It was my daddy Joseph and my mama Nellie, and there were 7 of us. It was me, Ibby, I was 3, Nell 4, Priscilla 7, Jacob, he was 10, and then the big kids, they was teenagers. There was George, Joe Jr., and Eliza. And of course my mom and daddy, Nellie and Joseph. My mama was big and pregnant at the time, and my father, Joseph, he was a boatman. Now you may not know this, but black men were very, very busy on the water in the 1800s, moving them goods, because that was mostly the way goods was moved. And my father was a boatman for a long time. And so he knew the waters of the Chesapeake like the back of his hands. He knew where it was flat, the current. He knew where there was a current. He knew where there was a wind. He just knew all about that water and moving them goods, the tobacco and the indigo and the cotton, the ropes and the sails. He knew all about that. And he would be gone. Sometimes he'd go on short trips because they would go from the plantation to the port. And sometimes they would go from port to port. And sometimes he would be gone overnight or a few nights. And we'd say, Mama, where Daddy at? And she'd say things like Charleston or Philadelphia. I didn't know what none of that was. I just knew he was gone. And then he would come back and it would be, we had such a lovely big, beautiful family. Now my mama, she cooked in the big house. And one day she came home. My daddy was home that day already. She came home, she said, Joseph, they getting ready to sell Elisa and Joe Jr. And he said, He didn't talk much, my daddy. He smiled a lot, but he didn't talk much. He said, let's go for a walk. So they stepped outside because they didn't want to confuse us or get us more upset than we was already upset. They stepped outside and they walked. They came back in the house. He said, okay, we're going to do it. Now, I didn't know what that meant, but once my daddy said, okay, we're going to do it, I knew something was going to happen. And we was going to do it, it was going to happen. And so a few days went by, we didn't say nothing. Because, you know, on the plantation, you learn early to be quiet. You don't say nothing about nothing to nobody.
Nobody.
Because people got big mouth and they want to put themselves forward and they want to tell on you, not everybody. But you can never be sure. So we kept that quiet in the family, even the news that they might be trying to sell Eliza and Joe Jr. We kept it quiet. So Friday come, Good Friday, 1831. Friday come, and Daddy said, okay, we going to church. Now, we didn't have a proper church, but we went in the woods, and we met with other people, and we had a good time, and we sang, you don't believe I've been redeemed. Angels in heaven sign my name.
Yes.
And we just had a good service, and we worshiped with all the peoples, and at the end of that, my daddy said, y'all stand right there. So that's what we did. We stood right there. And here come old Ebenezer, old nosy, big mouth Ebenezer. He said, what y'all do? My daddy, he had the story ready. He said, well, now you know Nelly people live 1 or 2 plantations down the way, so I thought we would go over there since it's the Easter holiday and Massa, what's his name? Wolford won't be back for a while, and we're going to go down there for a Nelly bus, because I did tell you she's big and pregnant. So Ebenezer said, well, you know you got to be back in time for the work bell next week. He said, yeah, I know, Ebenezer, I know. Okay, well, y'all got to be back in time. He said, yeah, I know. And finally, old Ebenezer walked off, and we walked down the road toward that next plantation. Then we got to the path, and we walked down the path, and we got to the water. And there was a canoe my daddy had set aside. He set aside that canoe. Now, you know, canoes are not very long. They about from here to here. And when I would see him in it, it would be full of produce. It looked very big, but now all of us got to get in it, and I'm like, And but my mama got in there first. She laid down, her belly sticking out. And she called me and Nell, and we cradled on either side of, and then the rest of us got on in the boat. Because what you're going to do, we was on our way to freedom. All right. We got in the boat. Now, Joe Jr. and George had been apprenticing with my father, and because my father had that particular skill, sometimes he was able to hire himself out. He had set aside a little money, hoping that he would be able to buy our freedom or get us a few extra things. So he had a little bit of something with him. And Joe Jr. and George, they knew a little bit about the water, but not nearly as much as my dad. Anyway, we set off. And we went up that Chesapeake. Sometimes we hugged the shore. Sometimes we was in the water for a few hours. It was fun. And then after a while, are we there yet? But we kept going because we was on our way to freedom, and we had to be quiet because, you know, sound travels across the water. That's right. And I forgot to tell you this part. When we got in that boat, they covered us all over with a tarp. And then they covered the tarp with the produce, the indigo and the cotton and the tobacco and the ropes, because he had to have a story if somebody stopped them. And in them days like these days, any white person could stop them and ask them what they did. Right? And so we set off, and it was nighttime. We made good time because it was always two people rowing and sailing. George Jr. and my daddy and Joe, Joe Jr. and my daddy Joe or George and my daddy was doing a lot and the sailing, but we was on our way to freedom. We was on our way to freedom. And finally, after many, many, many hours, it felt like a gazillion hours, but I'm sure it wasn't that many. We pulled over to the side so people could get out of the boat and relieve themselves and rest themselves for a minute, but not too long. We got back in that boat because we was on our way to freedom. And we rowed, they rowed and they sailed, and we felt that water slapping against the boat, and sometimes we would hear the pat, 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 because it would rain and the wind, and we just kept going and we kept going and we kept going. We went 80 miles up the Chesapeake, and we got to this thing called the C&D Canal, which had just been finished 2 years before. It was only 16 miles wide. It was going to get us from the Chesapeake over to Delaware, and then we would be close to freedom in Philadelphia. But we had to get through that C&D Canal. It was only 16, but it was heavily, heavily watched. And there was a particular man, my daddy knew about him, Mr. Fieldster. And if he saw you, he was going to stop you. And we were so lucky. Fieldster had just got off when we came through, but we still had to be quiet. And by now, it's 2 or 3 days. So you know how hard that was to be up under that tarp and up underneath all that stuff and still be quiet and be still. And we had to be more quiet and still in them 16 miles than we had to be any other time, but we got through it. And there we were on the other side of the C&D Canal. Now we in Delaware. We still have to be quiet because Delaware is a slave state. So we got only 40 miles to get to Philadelphia, only 20 miles to get to Pennsylvania where we'll be free. We did that 20 miles, and then he pulled over and we got out of the boat and we said, we're free. We're free. I didn't know what that meant, but I was really happy. And I knew that Joe Jr. and Eliza was going to be with us, and they would not be sold away to nobody. I knew that. Then we got back in the boat. By that time, my daddy's dog tired, and so are George and Joe Jr., but we still kept going. We got to Philadelphia that night. We couldn't all get off the boat because abundance of caution. He took an older child and a younger child and himself, and he went off. Then he came back and he did it again. He came back and he did it again until it was just me and my mom and him, and we walked to the office. And we walked to the office of abolitionist William Still. Now, you know, William Still took notes, and he was also a really great underground railroad conductor. So he took us to a boarding house, and oh, we were so happy. We'd have some food and some to drink, and we'd be able to clean ourselves a little bit and not tight like that boat. But I didn't mind it because we was free, whatever that was. When I was 3 years old, I didn't know. But whatever that was, it meant we was all going to be together, and we was going to stay together. And we stayed in that boarding house for 2 or 3 days, and then they moved us on up to Providence, Rhode Island here. Because my daddy could get jobs, and George and Joe Jr. could get jobs, and we made our way, and finally we stayed here and we prospered. And I know that slave owner was still advertising for us a year after we left, and then he died. Hallelujah. So that's my freedom story, and I thank you for listening to it. If you don't believe I've been redeemed,
Yes.
the angels in heaven
Yes.
sign my name.
Mm-hmm.
Follow me down to the Jordan street.
Yes.
The angels in heaven sign my name.
All right now.
Went to the water was cold. Angels in heaven
Yes.
sign my name.
Yes.
Chilled my body, but not my soul. Angels in the heavens sign my name. I know
Yes.
I've been changed.
Tell
Sing
it,
with me.
sister.
I
Yes.
know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. The angels in heaven sign my name.
Amen.
Now, what's my time, somebody?
7:39.
Oh, right, we got enough time
Okay.
to finish telling y'all that story. I started telling y'all about growing up in Louisiana
Mm-hmm.
and how my kinfolk in Texas, they were more woke than we were in Louisiana back in the day.
There you go.
And something recently happened in my home state of Louisiana that made me start thinking about my heritage. And that was, there was a plantation called the Nottoway Plantation in White Plains, Louisiana. Now I remember we had to pass that way to go to Baton Rouge and on our way to New Orleans. And everybody always said they had an evil spirit at that plantation. Now when you look at it, it looked like it was grand and beautiful. It was all big and white, and they had like maybe 65 rooms to it. And in the back, they had the slave quarters where you could look through the walls and see the sun. You could look through the walls and see your neighbor. And to think that men and women raise their children in these things that the slave master was comfortable to call a shelter. And in the middle of those slave quarters, they had this great big, several of them, these great big cauldron-like pots that they all had to communally cook. That was Nottoway. And they had plenty other plantations in Louisiana. And there was one that I even performed in. And this one was so well known because the whole plantation was built by Africans. Now, they ain't no big deal. Africans were skilled, like you said. But this plantation had no nails in the whole construction. Because the Africans knew how to do that slip thing and the whatever and the whatever and the whatever. That plantation is still standing. But not the Nottoway plantation. So when I was reading that, I was like everybody else on TikTok. It's gone! It's gone! Too much suffering. But it made me remember my great-granddaddy. I love my great-granddaddy. And I was a little girl, not 3, but I think I was like maybe 6 or something like that, when I got to meet my great-granddaddy. Now, my great-granddaddy was a child slave. Now, he was born over there in Galveston, but he told me and my sisters about how it was growing up. Oh, Lord, he said, that Texas heat was so strong Back in the day, that Texas heat, that sun would blaze down like laser beams. But it didn't matter because everybody, all the slaves had to go out and work. It didn't matter if you were a little bit child, as long as your hands could move, your legs could move, you could push, you could hold, you had to go out there and do some work.
Yeah.
The only people who could not and was not thought to work outside in the fields was the old ladies. The old ladies stayed close to the plantation, they stayed close to the kitchen, they did all the housework for the master and took care of the slave quarters. My great-granddaddy said that there was this slave that his master had bought from the Nottoway plantation. Now that wasn't no big deal, he said, but it was a big deal because the slave master who sold Miss Sally Sue knew that she was special, and he could not have her around because her energy was too pure. Her energy was too righteous, and he was so wicked and evil, and he just couldn't live with that anymore. So he sold her to my great-granddaddy's slave master. Now, that slave master didn't know how special Miss Sally Sue was. Miss Sally Sue was a big, tall, strapping woman, beautiful woman, inside and out. And just like your papa, whatever Miss Sally Sue said was gonna happen, it was gonna happen. And if she said, I feel it. I feel it in my bones, y'all. When I feel it in my bones, it's gonna come true. Everybody in the plantation just gravitated towards her. Because you know how when good people come in your life, how you just kind of go and be with them. You just want to sit underneath their tutelage. You just want to hear their wisdom. Well, that's how big Aunt Sally Sue was. Everybody gathered around. In the beginning, Master and his wife, they would gather around too because she had all kinds of stories to tell. Everybody loved her. Everybody but the overseer. Oh, he had some wicked eyes. He was mean. But she didn't let that bother her. Because she said, oh, I know a day is coming when I'm going to be free. And he did not like her talking about no freedom because the slaves on that plantation over there in Galveston, they didn't know nothing but to be a slave. They never said nothing about no freedom. And he did not want her planting no seeds about freedom. But every opportunity Aunt Sally Sue had, she would tell them, children, get ready. I feel it. Freedom coming. My great-granddaddy said, on this particular day in June, they had to go out and pick all that cotton and everything. And it was so hot, he said, imagine, you're 6 years old, and they give you this great big old cotton picking sack. It's like a cotton sack that's almost 6 feet long, and you have to fill all that up with cotton. Now in Louisiana, I have picked cotton. Baby. Oh, y'all. You gotta try. No. What you say, no?
We don't have to.
You think that cotton you buy and you put on your face is so soft.
Yes.
And so sweet. And so loving. No, that cotton don't like you. When you put your hand in that cotton ball, baby, that thing cut your hands off.
Yes, it does.
And those people, young and old, had to pick up almost 200 pounds every day. My great-granddaddy said even though he was 6 years old, they did not give him no break. He still had to do it just like everybody else. Well, they went out in that field and they got all that cotton. They put it all on the wagons, getting it ready to go to the cotton exchange down there in Galveston. And when they came back, they were greeted by Aunt Sally Sue and all the other ladies that was there in the slave quarters, and they had fixed a feast. And all the slaves, and my great-granddad said he couldn't believe what he saw because it wasn't no special day. It was in the middle of June. Usually they have those barbecues and red soda pie and a velvet cake for holidays, but not in June. When they all walked around the tables and looking, they asked, well, what's the special occasion? Aunt Sally Sue said, children, get ready. It's time to celebrate. I feel it. I feel it in my bones. Freedom is coming. Well, they didn't know, just like you didn't know what freedom was. They didn't know what that, not my great-granddad. He didn't know what that was, but he sure liked that food. Especially in pork chops, because in pork chops they had to be specially stole from Master's Smokehouse. They loved, they ate. Then they had to go back out in the field. They went out in the field, they gathered up all that cotton, and then they brought it out to the exchange. All of them. But when they got there to Galveston, they were met by the Union soldiers. And some black, beautiful Union soldiers. Yes! My people. When they got there, they told all them overseers, and especially that wicked one, because you know he had to be standing at the front telling everybody, keep on going. Keep on going. Don't let them stop you. Go on. But everybody was following the orders of the Union soldiers. And the Union soldiers told them there will be no trading going on here today. And you have to go over to the Ashton Villa over on Broadway Street. Everybody went to the Ashton Villa. When they went there, Gordon Granger, General Gordon Granger, was standing on the second balcony. And he was reading the Emancipation Proclamation. He was reading the General Order number 3. And my great-granddaddy said that he didn't know what freedom was when he said freedom. But when he looked around the crowd, everybody was as if they stopped breathing. And all of a sudden, it hit them. We free. We free? We free! We free! We free! Great-granddaddy said it was like the earth began to shake and tremble when they started shouting, we free! Some of the people took out running. They went down the street, down Broadway Street, to this church that still stands there today. It's called the Reed's Chapel, AME Church. And they started praising and dancing and celebrating. And all those slaves had piled back into those wagons and they went on back to their prospective plantations. Aunt Sally Sue and all the other ladies were waiting for them. They didn't even have to tell her. She already knew. She already had her stuff back. And she said, from this day forward, you don't never let nobody tell you you something that you're not. You are free. Go and live and remember this day. And from that day, which was June 19th, 1865, to this day. And what's so special about this year is because it is 160 years, this year, 2025, that Juneteenth has been celebrated. And from what I understand from Google, that Juneteenth is the oldest celebration in the United States. That's Google, y'all, it ain't me. But if y'all see something different, y'all let me know. So when I heard about the Nottoway plantation, and I thought about Aunt Sally Sue, and how she had this special righteousness about her, this where she could see into the future and see that things were coming. That's what I want to leave with us. Don't give up, children, because a great day is coming. Yes. Don't give up your power in your words. You are free.
Yes.
Free, free.
Yes.
Thank you.
Amen. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Woo, thank you, Jesus.
Now we close, you guys, and celebrating. And again, I want to thank you all for being here today and to continue with our Juneteenth celebration. Don't forget freedom, y'all.
No.
It's every day.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes.
And the power of your tongue.
Yes.
We're going to close with a very special poet with fierce, flowing freedom words. A poet whose work honors the beauty and resistance embedded in Juneteenth. Please put your hands together and welcome David Miller.
Good evening and blessings be upon you all. Thank you, and it's been some wonderful work we've been experiencing in all the mediums. Just a couple of kind of factoids before we dive in. There were still enslaved individuals in Delaware and Kentucky up till the end of 1865, because Delaware and Kentucky were border states. And actually the last freed enslaved individuals officially were at the end of 1866. Native Americans, the Creek, the Chickasaw, the Seminoles, and the Cherokees still had enslaved some of the ancestors. Some other things of note: in 1860, there were 4 million of the ancestors living in the United States, and collectively we were worth more than the factories, the banks, and the railroads put together. Think about that. If you did it in real dollars right now, just for our labor, we should be compensated $6 trillion, and that's not hyperbole. Cotton was half of all of U.S. exports for the first half of the 19th century, and in the 1830s, cotton was the primary crop in the United States and around the world, and who was picking that? So I'm going to read about 3 individuals who were buried in this cemetery. Millie Tunnell, who was mentioned, Victoria Earl Matthews, and George Johnson. I kissed George Johnson and Millie Tunnell's graves on my way in here. Millie Tunnell was born into slavery in Virginia in 1783 and died in Jamaica, Queens. At the time, she was the oldest resident in Queens, which at the time was considered part of Long Island. She was freed in 1860 and came north initially, was living in Flushing, and worked as a domestic and a washerwoman. She had an incredible memory, even up, she died supposedly at 114, and had saved enough money to buy the burial plots of herself, her husband, and all of her children right here in Maple Grove Cemetery. This is called Hot Water Fuss.
I couldn't cook Mondays for the yolks of water I loved, nor for the baby frocks, gowns, aprons, shifts, stockings, handkerchiefs, linens looped through twice, first boiled in a copper pot with hot soapy water, then simmered, then rinsed in hot and cold to get out specks of soap along with the dirt I freed with a laundry bat. Knowing on most of my week in the Brickenhoff cottage, the work was fetch and boil, scrub and rinse, empty and fill, rub and pound, ring and ring. Days were plunging a dolly peg up, down and up, side and side, making hot water fuss enough to get clothes spanking. This would start Monday, would be delivered Saturday. Sundays I counted on the Lord to deliver me. 5.
On good days, oaked garments spread across the yards, bushes and hedgerows, and dangling from the clothesline. Sunlight and a breeze did drying's undirty work. But when the brick and hearth wanted their garb drier quicker, they would hand me their clothes wringer, and I'd wind and squeeze they glad rags, then mash sheets and towels between rubber rollers. If it rained, it was like a crowd of clothes had dropped by my cottage for a spell. White folks' attire hung in my cramped kitchen and attic. I'd tighten outfits with clam pleats to an overhead clothes era, drape some atop my warm oven and my stiff giddy-up, a clothes horse. 7. I would inch the bottom of my iron by my cheek like a hell's telephone to see if it was proper hot. Or I'd spit on the iron, and if it hissed, I knew it was ready to do right by the Van Sicklin's get-ups. Once I, by then sweating, knew the iron was barking, I folded and folded a blanket, placed a tattered sheet on top of it, and then all of it atop the kitchen table, which was my ironing board. The iron, a closed kettle I would set on a bar of Sunlight soap so my metal magic could slide and the heat wouldn't chew the sheet. My irons really did the trick on body shirts and frail garments, did the trick on dainty details like petticoat frills. Nonetheless, I would still wrap a padded holder around the wooden handle, because even that part of the wrinkle remover would have been like clutching a banana in the devil's overcrowded residence. 8. In their world, even clean wrinkles said slob. So long as it hadn't soured, I'd save for 3 days the water I'd anointed potatoes in. Strain out any bran, add dried wheat and potato gratings, then dip those white folks' clothes in my milky sour mix. That starch would add body to the clothes those high-class bodies wore. My private potion provided a glaze for and prevented dirt from getting on those shirt collars, cuffs, and fronts, and made the missus' linen and lace, white caps and aprons stiff with starch, made all them clothes crisp as pork rinds. Truth is, they think I ain't got nothing else on my mind but what decorates their sharp elbows and narrow behinds. So this is a sonnet. She was married to a gentleman named Merrick Ewell, who was actually enslaved on a plantation right near hers. They both were freed before slavery ended, didn't realize that they both came north and ended up in New York. Merrick was out on Long Island, Yaphank. He ended up actually, it was Greenport, but there was a kind of sanitarium called Yaphank, and he ended up in there. He married another woman, hadn't seen Millie in 40 years, and somehow Millie's daughter found out through a friend that he was in this place and brought him to live with Millie, and he's buried with her out there in the plot that she paid for. So this is a sonnet sort of meditating on that. It's called Millie and Merrick. Kisses and visits on the eastern shore, where soil was groomed to be sandy and deep. Enslaved, you wedded and done with your chores from nearby Drummondtown plantations. Feet with lumber, a mile at most of plodding. Freed at distinct times, you both reached New York, both found the north while losing one another on some unsown road you'd reached a fork. 3 decades later, you clutched each other a ways north of corn, marsh grass, and eastern shore. You in Jamaica, Merrick some poorhouse, but his trickling hours spent in your new house. Bones both in your bought plot, now never lost, for grave only consent to death's divorce. So George Johnson is buried out here as well. He was the first, definitely the first African-American recording star, might have been the first recording star, period. Came up in the minstrel period, and is really, I shouldn't say interesting, but sort of tragic. All these songs that I used to sing as a child, I had no idea they came out of the minstrel tradition. So you're gonna hear a number of these lyrics that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and these are white men singing in blackface and insulting us. Johnson, 1840s in Virginia, and then died here penniless in Manhattan and was buried in a mass grave here at Maple Grove Cemetery. So this is touching on that. It's called Opening Number, and it's a kind of extended metaphor using all this minstrel stuff to get to like what was George's opening number in life, because they don't know where he was born exactly in Virginia, nor do they know the exact date. Opening Number, after George Johnson in the minstrel tradition. The Virginia minstrels had Jimmy Crack Corn and I Don't Care before they performed Julius Sneezer in a semicircle, wisecracking one-nighters filled with dandy, mammy, darky, bootlicker, shtick, skit, wiggles. Echoing Gumbo Chaff and Johnny Roach, the Burnt Cork Christie Minstrel's opening number was, "In Dixieland I'll take a stand to live and die in Dixie," before plunging into their 3-act format where happy-go-lucky Negroes were roasted, fished for, and smoked. Old Cornmeal and Daddy Rice were wide-eyed, balloon-lipped, raggedy intratact, wheeling about and jumping Jim Crow to a banjo twang tambo bone clatter. Boston's Ethiopian serenaders opened with, "Camptown ladies sing this song, doo-dah, doo-dah, Camptown racetrack 5 miles long, oh, doo-dah day," before their interlocutor and endmen, Brother Tambo and Bones, babbled English mincemeat. Then they crooned Dearest May, "Now niggers listen to me, a story I'll relate. It happened in the valley in the old Carolina state." A refined high-class lineup of black-faced bone opera concerts in white waists and tailcoats. Pete Conklin, who's actually buried in the cemetery, he's a white guy. Pete Conklin, it's still a disgrace even if you drag indignity across the Atlantic before the Queen and Duke in Devonshire and you're mistaken for black men, even fancy cool white. But you swear you're the knot drop, save your master Juba, a body of percussive lightning, imitating white dancers, imitating black dancers, while he black and blackface, double shuffle, pigeon wing, hand jive, pantomime, tracking upon the heel, backwarding and forwarding, like he playing peekaboo with a raindrop. How say you, Conklin, prepubescent cannonball gesture? Shall we just add a black man and stir before the Bryant Minstrels opening number, which included banjos on their knees after they'd come from Alabama? Then sank into the dim-witted slapstick of Uncle Dad's cabin. Billy the Banjo King commenced with the right foot followed, the heel down mighty hard. 10 platoons of dandy coons marching the skin-mo guard. Before his ragtag banana boat clog dancing hunting club would get pseudo-obstropolis spoofing Civil War uniforms, and he would employ gumbo strumming and a Jew's harp. Other minstrels glowed and opened with Negro insult songs like Polly Wolly Doodle. But George Johnson, what happens when you can't nail down your opening number on the earth? Can't pinpoint your first garbled song, your time's initial signature? But after taking it all in, your lungs' first fluid-filled utterance, a gasp, your way of saying you were astonished by Mother Earth? Did this happen in Fluvanna on a plantation not far from the Piedmont towpath, near where packet boats dawdled beneath the Free Bridge? Or Loudoun County, the small crossroads of wheatland near Virginia's northeastern Cape? The betwixt and between of neither here nor there with bubbling midget hills, fields of green punctuated by wheat's agreement, the cautiousness of corn and Yorkshire hogs. In or near this was Johnson born, or in or near 80 miles south in Fluvanna County? Poor black boy, with neither a date nor a place worthy of a house of worship taking note. Parents likely had no scribble ability to note the first breath of the first Negro recording artist, which key it might have been in, what truth that time had left out. So this is called Laugh-In. His 2 hit songs were called The Laughing Song and The Whistling Coon, and they were definitely in the minstrel tradition. And he had this incredible ability. He could laugh melodically and like in tune, and same thing with his with his whistling, I'm sorry. So this is called Laugh-In. The laughing, the tittering, the giggling, the chuckling, the chortling, the cackling, the howling with, the snickering song, the sniggering, the snorting, the ha-ha, the hee-hee, the ho-ho, the tee-hee, the yak-yak, the yucking up, the guffoo song, the roaring with, the bust a gut, the split one side, the poo-poo, the rolling in the aisles, the cracking up, the pee its pants song, which is in stitches, Johnson's song, hiccup chuckles, pursuing a tune. Victoria O. Matthews is also buried here. Not that I couldn't find, I was running up on the clock, so I said, let me get on over here before somebody says, hey, you're late. I forgot to mention, Master Juba was this incredible African-American enslaved dancer, the things they described the way that he would do with his body were surreal, and what was tragic is he was a brother and he would dance in blackface. And he was so skilled, he could imitate white dancers doing what would have been considered traditional white dances, but then also kind of shucking and jiving, imitating black dancers, even though he was black. You dig what I'm saying? And wearing blackface. So this is in the voice of Victoria O. Matthews. She likely was the byproduct of her white master and her mother. She came from Georgia. Both George Johnson and Millie Tunnell were from Virginia. And Matthews was really, I mean, they're all impressive, but Matthews was a journalist, a fiction writer. She was part of the early settlement movement, and this poem was going to be touching on that. She actually worked with Ida B. Wells, and she wrote essays. So this is about her helping Southern girls coming up to the North because they would be kind of tricked by these white men and end up sometimes being in prostitution when that wasn't what they thought was why they were coming north. And she started a place which was her settlement organization called the White Rose Mission, which was initially on the Upper East Side in the 70s, and a wealthy white businessman helped her. And then it ended up ultimately, if any of you are familiar, kind of where the Schomburg is, and this is the centennial of the Schomburg, so big ups to Arturo, Afro-Puerto Riqueño. It was right near where the Schomburg and the County Cullen Library is off of Malcolm X Boulevard in the mid-130s. So it's called the Beck of Cots. Let's see if there's anything. Expressmen and employment agents are white men who would be looking for these young ladies when they made their way to New York. The Beck of Cots. Bedeviled by what might and knowing they were down south, I sometimes did and always had a traveler's aid meet these southern colored girls beyond the glint of the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Meet them before a glad, thick hand with bent intentions did. Hampton's roads, dark waters mumble in the distance, passengers' cheeks spotted in tramp steamer portholes. Meet them before an employment hand convinced the crook in a girl's arm to rinse a brothel's brass spittoons. Tidying up after a white man finishes his unbuttoned business, cinching his belt through his pants loop, linking his cuffs, bending his curling collars and toweling. Finally, his damp hands hoping to get some woman's heat, and the whiff it announces, off him, off him. Before he busses his wife on her oblivious cheek, her, how was your day? Breeze past with, working. A dish of Jimmy Crab and ground grits covered and long since cooled on their dining room table. No, I tried to always have a woman inch between that employment agent's oily introduction, tried to make sure that girl made that northbound train instead of making a mistake. 2. Mistakes are smeared mirrors that if not careful, we can look into for far too long. Negro Narcissus reflecting on her reflection in a pool of brackish water, reflecting on a decision that could haunt her for her natural-born days, the haunted, not the hunter. Where there will be no white and yellow flower, no trumpet corona, no jonquil or daffodil to sprout and herald her name. Hence I, this time, order a travel aid to Pier 26, which is down Lower Manhattan, where the Robin's Ripley derrick hunches over the Hudson's docks. I send someone knowing a girl had spent 19 mostly overnight hours in steerage. Even the sea was split. Our folks could only smoke on the starboard where they slept behind a rail on the schooner's shade deck. And $20 on what should have been a $7 ticket, where another glad hand, another mustachioed interruption, an expressman, an employment agent, might have another innocent last travel a much shorter distance along a much sadder path. He'd help her with her carpet bag. But if she doesn't get domestic work, he'll have her work her Mason-Dixon hips on murky Yankee sheets. My aide saves her from the station, brings her to the White Rose Mission, a dozen cots at the beck of a few centuries worth of women. To try to take a load off her feet and spoon a gobbet on her dreams, I teach her needle and thread, pattern and fit, to envision being a millionaire's milliner, hat block and pushpin, buckram and brim's edge. I teach her to respect every breath loitering in her dark nostrils, to make hers a right life rather than a wrong turn. So I'll read, I just had a book come out on slavery in the Bronx. Bronx was the breadbasket of the North in the 18th century, all of the 18th century. There was a Native American and an enslaved Native American and an enslaved African woman who married, and this is sort of meditating on their lives and enslavement. Her name was Hannah, and the enslaved Native American, which would have been part of the Sycamore, if I'm not mispronouncing, was named Robin. They had some children. They were enslaved to the Leggett family, which was in the Hunts Point area, if you're familiar with that part of the Bronx. And I'll just leave it at that. It's called Of the Issues of the Body, and I thank you for listening. Of the body, of the body, of the issue, of the body, of the Negro, of the Indian, of the Hannah bequeathed to Robin. There's their boy, they called him Abraham. There's their girl, they named her Jenny. Of the body, of the body, of the issues, there were many. For the Indian, for the Negro of the body, when in bondage, there was Hannah wed to Robin, known by Beth and by Mary, who in death to her daughter she deigned to give what's known as holy, with only marks and not her full name when she signed again and again. Oh, their bodies held in bondage, think not, rented breath in increments, inhales, exhales, their bidding done. Oh, their kingdom it will not come, for the body, for the blood. Oh, the issues of these bodies, are there issues for these bodies? One of copper, one of chocolate. To one this land was first, to the other this land was forced. Up on the body, upon the body. Were the children chopper, co-plate? Was their hair huddled or flimsy? Were their noses bubbled or sickled, nests of breath or hives of death? Was English their entry point, the way their mouths made sense of how their days had been dented? Of the bodies, what's the issue with forever and how it lingers? Call them shackled, call them shilling, call them offspring, call them progeny, for blood will always haunt the body. Look, there's an orchard and its acres, some 1,200 belong to Leggett. To the native this was sacred, to the native this the crazy. Now a question, dear intruder, are there disputes between some parties? Can you cup and buy the sky in the matter of whatever in the year of their Lord, in the year of their Lord, and witness where there is a hero, Gabriel Leggett, father and husband, debts he owed would be covered from his stock of breathing creatures. Oh, their bodies were his bodies, but their souls were so their own. Phony owners of the earth, squinting priors of the sky. Note the woodlands now have green airs where the earth is pinched and scalds the ground. Mute the earth that mangles the air. They, the yeomen who seed the soil, work tomorrow in its backyard. Work the meadow of planting neck. Marsh the salt that smears the sorrow. Oh, the body, oh, the issue, should there be one. With the Hannah, with the Robin who worked the mill by the Whitewood. On the patent that's called the West Farm. Squeezed between another West and Mauritania. Of those lots and of those half rods, this argued earth where they would toil. A tract of land not puckered enough for them to handle with their bodies, or the size that they would clutch. So ball your tongue up in a quiet corner and scrub the houses and the outhouse, erase the out and face a house. Oh, the chestnut by the river marked its body deep with seasons. Dearest Hannah hugging Robin with her body, yes, their bodies. Which is Robin's, which is Hannah's? Divided widows of all of this, and now the land's a famished dandy. Then what of Robin and what of Hannah? Let's kiss their spirits with a shall we? The part and parcel of splintered centuries, as if time's a tree and its shadows are axes. I will close with a piece from my book about slavery in Manhattan called Bone Yarn, and I have copies that don't look anywhere near as awful as this one does. But that says a lot of wear and tear, getting out the word. So there was a revolt in Manhattan in 1712. Manhattan has the oldest and largest slave cemetery in the United States, 7 acres, 15,000 bodies. Manhattan was second only to Charleston, South Carolina in terms of per capita enslaved population in an urban setting. So this is called Mercy. So there were 24 enslaved individuals, some 18 of them Negro, some Native American, and one what they call Spanish Negro, which might have been sort of a Semitic Arab who had been caught out in the Atlantic. And so this gentleman, Klaus, he actually hadn't participated. What happened was they set an outhouse on fire, and their hope was the whites would come out, they would kill the ones who came to try to put out the fire, then the rest of the enslaved would rise up, they would kill all of the whites, and it would be like DC in the 80s and called Gotham City, but it didn't quite work out that way. 6 of them committed suicide, the rest were rounded up, either hung, broken on the wheel, or burned at the stake. We talk about the Salem witch hunts. There were no white women burned at the stake. There were some who were hung. There's a great poem by Margaret Atwood called Morning in the Burned House. No, well, Half Hung Mary, but it's in her book Morning in the Burned House. But the irony is most people don't know there were enslaved Africans burned at the stake right here in New York City. So Klaus, who didn't participate, was broken on the wheel, which means they tied his limbs to like the wheel from a cart, and an executioner was hitting his limbs till they basically snapped. So this is called Mercy, and a peck is a noun, is a large amount of something. A penny knife is an 18th century pocket knife. Kip is a street that was in Lower Manhattan that's no longer there. And the epigraph is from an individual who suffered from severe cognitive dissonance, who said we smelled and were subhuman, but he was having children with one of us, which is Mr. Thomas Jefferson. This is from his book, Notes on the State of Virginia, and he's literally meditating on his fears about what might happen as a result of the institution of slavery. He says, "Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just." Mercy. Along the city's jawline by the wharf where a peck of slaves were auctioned, Klaus might have heard tell how Robin sunk a penny knife into the conch below his owner's shoulder. Now barefoot he is stripped to the waist, spread eagle, bound to a wagon wheel, spokes versed in grass and its green obedience, mud scorched metamorphosis, the way snow delivers news piecemeal from the heavens. Limbs stretched, slowly rotated on that wheel, Klaus absorbed the dust, the turns, the deliveries, each journey's leg and arm. Executioners seldom traffic in compassion. This one punishes Klaus bottom up. First, a sledgehammer rains on his shins. "Jesus, have mercy," he screams and rotates until they snap between gaps of the wheel. A wooden cudgel sinks to his kneecaps. He howls and rotates till they shatter. Even the chalky, taunting throng winces. Then the thunder of an iron bars administers to his forearms. He shrieks and rotates till they're smashed. The elbows, the chest, the endless bone cracking caught a quarter of a mile off, until, against God's own architecture, each limb dips like a fractured hammock. On the Commons, between Broadway and Kip, the wheel is nailed high on a pole. Sparrowhawks peck at his broken body. For 4 days, for likely only having offered Robin a penny knife or shelter in the wee hours of an April morning, he is bloody, billowing, laundry. Only death has the stomach to dry.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And blessings upon this holiday. And I do have copies of both of these books if you want to continue to support the arts. And happy solstice also. Happy solstice.
Have our hearts been filled with great stories, songs, remembrance, resilience, and rejoicing. Tonight we have traveled across time through chains and chants, through sorrow and song. Juneteenth is not just a date, and we've already established that. It's a reminder that freedom is a fight still ongoing. As we leave this place, let us carry the stories, the joy, the faith, the truth of Juneteenth with us. Let us be bold witnesses to our history and active architects of our future. I want to thank Helen and Carl for allowing us to be a part of this celebration here again. We thank you. Let's give them a very good round of applause. Thank you. And we want to thank you, the audience, for joining us tonight. Thank you. And before I say good night, we have our Kwanzaa will be celebrated here December the 28th. So please save the date. And there's also little leaflets for you guys if you'd like to take that home with you tonight and put it on your calendar for the end of the year. And it will be the African Folk Heritage Circles again, celebrating Kwanzaa and the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. So we hope that you and all your family and children and grandchildren will be able to join us. And also we have a sign-up sheet if you are interested in becoming an African Folk Heritage Circle storyteller. And the person that you would need to speak to is Miss Thelma Ruffin Thomas. She has some of the little handouts, and we have a listing that you can also sign if you are interested in becoming a member of the African Folk Heritage Circle. And I think that's it. So thank you again, guys, for joining us tonight, and continue to let freedom ring. Ring in each and every one of you, and tell your stories, how you got over. Thank you.
Would all the performers come up together, please? Because everybody wants to get pictures of all the performers together, right?
Okay.
Yes, we all want the picture, so
Yes.
all you come up together, please. Okay?
Thank you, guys. And Helen, are we having refreshments tonight?